Kirk's exit from Love and Hip Hop were already making waves. The footage, now circulating online, is driving fans into a frenzy. Some claim it was a crazy fan seeking revenge. Others feel this was planned, an act of vengeance tied to the tension behind the scenes. But what's the true story? Stay tuned, because what we're about to unveil will change everything. Kirk Frost had always been used to drama. After all, he built his entire career on it. But nothing could have prepared him for what went happen that night. It was meant to be simply another public appearance, a routine night out. He had been keeping a quiet profile ever since the rumors about his Love and Hip Hop leaving started making rounds. The blogosphere were on fire, fans were discussing, and everyone wanted to know the truth. But Kirk? He had stayed quiet, allowing the conjecture run wild. Maybe that was his mistake. Maybe being mute had simply fueled the fire, because what happened next was unlike anything he had ever faced before. The event was packed. A mix of industry insiders, influencers, and die-hard Love and Hip Hop fans had arrived, and Kirk was going through the venue, playing it cool as he always did. His name still carried weight, and despite the controversies, he had his dedicated admirers. But there was tension in the air. Something just seemed off. Rashida had warned him earlier that day to be careful. "People are mad, Kirk," she had said. This whole VH1 situation got them feeling some type of way. He had brushed it aside, assuming she was simply being dramatic. But looking back, maybe he should have listened. The first indicator of trouble came when he observed a bunch of fans watching him a little too closely. At first, he thought nothing of it. He was used to people watching, murmuring, pointing. It comes with the territory. But there was something odd about these ones. They weren't simply fans. They were outraged, nearly enraged. He could see it in their faces. One of them, a man in his late 20s, had a glare in his eyes that Kirk didn't like. Something was brewing. At that moment, Kirk's phone buzzed in his pocket, a text from an unknown number. "You think you can just walk away from this?" He frowned. His gaze flashed back to the crowd, examining faces, attempting to figure out if someone there had just sent him that message. His instinct told him this wasn't simply some internet troll playing games. This was something real. His heart started to pound, but he forced the feeling down. This was an event, a public area. Nothing could happen here, right? Then it occurred. One moment, Kirk was welcoming someone, shaking hands, playing the part of the unbothered reality star. The next, that same individual from the crowd had rushed forward, busting through the security barrier. There was no warning, no yelling, no threats, just a swift, rapid movement, an arm swinging, a fist flying, and before Kirk could react, pain exploded across his face. The force of the contact drove him reeling backward. Gasps flooded the air. People screamed. Security swarmed, but the assailant wasn't done. He lunged again, trying to seize Kirk, saying something that was lost in the pandemonium. Cameras flashed, catching every second. Phones were up recording. Within minutes, the footage would be everywhere. Kirk hardly had time to grasp what was happening before security finally seized control. They tackled the man to the ground, pinning him as he struggled, his voice finally piercing through the clamor. "You ruined everything," he shouted. "You lied." His words struck a shudder through the gathering. This wasn't some random act of violence. This was personal. Blood seeped from the corner of Kirk's mouth. His mind raced. Who was this guy? And what did he mean by ruined everything? Before he could even gather himself, the police were already on the scene, shoving through the onlookers. The man was still screaming as they hauled him away. "Tell the truth, Kirk. You know what you did." Rashida came by his side in an instant, her face tense with dread. "Kirk, are you okay?" Her voice was anxious, but he barely heard her. His heart was still hammering, his ears ringing. He wiped the blood from his lip, wincing. The whole thing had happened so fast. Too fast. And then came the realization. The cameras were still rolling. The internet was already running wild with speculation. And this wasn't simply an attack. This was a message. But from who? And why now? The police started asking questions. Witnesses were chatting. The attacker was still ranting in the background, his remarks increasing more frantic as they shoved him into a police car. You can't hide forever. Kirk shared a gaze with Rashida. They both knew this wasn't over. If anything, this was only the beginning. Later that night, Kirk sat in his car, staring at his phone. The footage was everywhere, on Instagram, on Twitter, on gossip blogs. Clips of the attack were already getting millions of views. But that wasn't what had Kirk worried. It was the DMs flooding in, dozens of messages, all from burner accounts. This is just the start. You think we forgot? Watch your back. His blood ran cold. He had been in the industry long enough to know when something was just internet noise. And this felt odd. Someone wanted to make a point, and they had used a public attack to issue their first warning. A fresh message flashed up. This time, it wasn't a burner account. It was an old buddy, someone Kirk hadn't spoken to in years. They're coming for you. You need to leave town. Now, Kirk's grip tightened around the phone. What had he gotten himself into? Kirk's hold on his phone tightened as he perused the message. They're coming for you. You need to leave town. Now, his pulse pounded in his ears. This wasn't some random troll. This was someone who knew something, someone who had been close enough to the situation to give a warning. But what situation? Kirk had plenty of opponents in the industry, yes, but this felt odd. This wasn't just industry politics or a scorned business deal gone awry. This was personal. Rashida's voice shocked him back to reality. She was grasping the steering wheel, staring at him with a mix of rage and concern. Kirk, we need to talk. Now, she had been quiet ever since the attack, but he could tell she was holding something in. Something enormous. He sighed, closing his phone, and looked at her. Go ahead, he mumbled, feeling his jaw where the punch had fallen. Who was that man? She demanded. He knew you, Kirk. He wasn't simply some insane fan. What the hell is going on? Kirk exhaled, staring out the window. He tried to brush it off, play it cool, tell her it was just some odd incidents. But he knew better. Rashida knew better. She had been by his side too long, seen too much. I don't know, he said, but I have a bad feeling about this. Rashida scoffed, shaking her head. A bad feeling? Kirk, you've just been attacked in front of the entire world. This isn't simply a lousy feeling. This is serious. And now you're getting messages advising you to leave town. Who sent that? Kirk hesitated before flipping his phone around so she could see. The second she read the name, her eyes widened. Wait, you're still in contact with him? Kirk shook his head. No, I haven't spoken to him in years. This came out of nowhere. Rashida let out a sharp breath, gripping the wheel tighter. Kirk, you need to start talking, because I'm telling you right now, I don't like where this is headed. Kirk leaned back in his seat, rubbing his hands over his face. He wasn't even sure where to start, but one thing was clear, this wasn't over. The next morning, Kirk woke up to turmoil. His phone had been ringing all night, and now the headlines were everywhere. Call Chief on camera. Car KFRST attack by enraged fan. Ex-love and hippie Hopi star targeted. Was this ACTUP? The real reason Kirk Frost was ATTKG. Shocking details. His stomach twisted as he scrolled through the articles. They were all speculating about what had happened, but none had any actual answers. The police had remained quiet about the attacker's identity, and thus far, no public comment had been issued. But that didn't stop the internet from running wild with hypotheses. Some were claiming the incident was a vengeance plan from someone Kirk had crossed in the past. Others suggested it was a PR gimmick to keep his name in the spotlight after reports of his termination. But then there were the darker theories, the ones that hit a bit too close to home. This goes deeper than just a fan losing control. There are suspicions that Kirk has been involved in something behind the scenes, something deadly. The attack was a warning. Kirk's breath caught in his throat as he read the comments. How are people already fitting the parts together? How are they coming so near to the truth? Before he could think too much about it, his phone rang. An unknown number. His heart skipped a beat. He almost didn't answer, but something told him he needed to. Hello? His voice was hoarse. Silence. Then a loud voice came through the line. Low. Calm. Almost too peaceful. You should have listened. Kirk's breath hitched. Who is this? The voice ignored his question. You think you can just walk away? That there won't be consequences. A chill ran down Kirk's spine. I don't know what you're talking about. A slow chuckle. Oh, you will. Soon enough. The call disconnected. Kirk glanced at his phone, his hands shaking. This was worse than he expected. This wasn't just another irate fan. This was bigger. This was something from his past, something that was finally catching up to him. And the worst part? He had no notion who was tugging the strings. Later that afternoon, Kirk and Rashida met with the police. They had brought him in for questioning, not as a suspect, but as a victim. They wanted to know if he recognized the man who attacked him, if he had any enemies, if he had received any threats before. Kirk kept his answers ambiguous. He wasn't ready to disclose everything, not yet, but something about the way the officers looked at him made him nervous. They knew more than they were letting on. Mr. Frost, one of the detectives finally said, flipping through a folder of documents. Your attacker's name is Jason Carter. Does that name mean anything to you? Kirk's blood ran cold. Jason Carter. He hadn't heard that name in years. Rashida shot him a glare. Kirk, she muttered, sensing his reaction. But Kirk couldn't speak. His mind was already racing, fitting things together. Jason Carter. Of all the people, why him? The detective observed Kirk closely. We looked into Carter's background. He's not just some obsessive fan. In fact, he has no history of being involved in love and hip-hop fandom at all. He leaned forward. But he does have a connection to you. Kirk swallowed hard. What kind of connection? The detective slid a paper across the table. A mugshot. Jason Carter's visage gazed back at him, older but yet recognized. He did time, the detective stated, and from what we gathered, he blames you for it. Rashida gasped, covering her mouth. Kirk, what did you do? Kirk's chest tightened. He couldn't breathe. He couldn't think. Because now, everything made sense. This wasn't about love and hip-hop. This wasn't about his termination. This was payback, and Jason Carter wasn't working alone. Kirk's fingers tightened into fists under the table. The room felt smaller, the walls closing in as the detective's words repeated in his thoughts. He blames you for it. Jason Carter. The name brought back memories Kirk had buried deep, ones he never believed would return. Rashida was still staring at him, her voice barely above a whisper. Kirk, what did you do? He swallowed hard, shaking his head. It's not what you think. The detective didn't flinch. Then why don't you tell us what it is? Kirk ran a hand over his face, exhaling sharply. He realized he had no choice. If Jason was back, if he was issuing threats, if he was willing to assault Kirk in public, then this wasn't something he could ignore. He gazed at Rashida, her eyes imploring for the truth, and finally he spoke. Years ago, Jason and I were friends. We did business together. Then things went bad. Asterisk, 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 real terrible. The detective exchanged looks with his partner. Define bad. Kirk hesitated, his mind racing. How much should he say? How much could he say? He cleared his throat. Jason got caught up in something illegal. Something I warned him about. I tried to get away before it was too late. But when everything went apart, he was the one who took the fall. He went to prison. I didn't. Rashida's breath hitched. Kirk, are you telling me? Kirk interrupted her off, his voice low. I didn't set him up, but I didn't save him either. The detective nodded slowly, as if piecing everything together. And now, years later, he's out. And he's coming for you. Kirk felt his stomach twist. This wasn't just a grudge. This wasn't just some old rivalry being resurrected. This was retaliation. The interrogation room felt claustrophobic, but Kirk forced himself to focus. He needed answers. "Do you know where he is now?" Kirk asked, his voice tight. The investigator leaned back, tapping a file against the table. "He's gone off the grid. No known residents. No recent credit card transactions. The only reason we know he was in town was because of the attack." Kirk's jaw tensed. "So you're telling me you have no idea where he is? No idea what his next step is?" The detective narrowed his eyes. "That's what we're trying to figure out. But Mr. Frost, if he really is after you, then you need to be careful. Because if last night was merely a warning," he shook his head, "the next time, you might not be so lucky." Rashida inhaled sharply, gripping Kirk's arm. "We need to leave town." Kirk shook his head. "No, that's exactly what he wants. He wants me scared. He wants me running. I'm not giving him that." Rashida's voice broke. "Kirk, this isn't a game. This man tried to hurt you in public. He's sending you threats. What happens if he comes back? What happens if?" A sharp knock at the door cut her off. One of the officers stepped in, holding a phone. "Sir, you need to see this." The detective took the phone, frowning as he pressed play on a video. Kirk and Rashida leaned closer, their blood running cold as they watched. It was security footage from the night before. A new angle, one the public hadn't seen yet. In the poor black and white film, they noticed Jason Carter prowling near the entrance of the venue long before the attack. But it wasn't the worst part. The worst part was that he wasn't alone. There was another figure beside him wearing a hoodie, their face concealed. The two guys spoke briefly, and then the hooded man handed Jason something. A little item, hardly discernible. Kirk's stomach sank. "Pause it. Zoom in." The detective did as he asked, and when the image cleared up, Kirk felt the air leave his lungs. It was a key. Rashida was the first to speak, her voice shaking. "A key to what?" Kirk didn't answer. He didn't have to. He already knew, because that key, it was to his office. Panic flooded through him as he jumped to his feet. "We need to go. Now." The detective barely had time to react before Kirk was already out the door, Rashida right behind him. They rushed to the parking lot, Kirk fumbling for his keys as a horrible notion overtook him. If Jason had access to his office, that meant he didn't even complete the sentence before driving down the road. Rashida grasped the dashboard, her voice wild. "Kirk, slow down. What if he's still there?" Kirk's hands tightened around the wheel. "Then I'll deal with him." But deep down, he wasn't sure what he'd find when he got there. The journey felt like an eternity, but when they eventually reached the building, Kirk's worst dread was confirmed. The door of his office was open, not kicked in, not coerced, just unleashed. As if someone had strolled right in, Rashida grabbed his arm. "Kirk, wait. We should call the police." Kirk shook his head. No time. Heart pounding, he pushed the door open, stepping inside. The office was dark, strangely silent. Papers were thrown about the desk, drawers left half open, as if someone had been hunting for something. And then he saw it. Sitting dead center on his desk, a single black envelope. Rashida gasped. "What is that?" Kirk swallowed hard, reaching for it. His hands trembled as he opened it, pulling out a folded piece of paper. 4 sentences were scrawled on it in red ink. "This isn't over, Kirk." Rashida took a shaky step back. He was here. Kirk clenched his jaw, his mind spinning. Jason had broken in, gone through his things, left him a message. But what was he looking for? What was he planning next? Before Kirk could answer that inquiry, his phone chimed. Another unknown number. He hesitated for only a second before answering. "Hello?" Silence. Then a terrifying voice. "Enjoying the memories? You should, because soon that's all you'll have left." The call disconnected. Kirk stood transfixed, his breath shallow. Rashida grasped his arm, her face pallid. And in that moment, one thing became terrifyingly evident. Jason Carter wasn't only back for revenge. He was returned to wreck Kirk's entire life. Kirk's grasp on the phone tightened as the conversation disconnected, the eerie silence lingering in the air like a haunting whisper. His heart pounded so hard it felt like it might burst out of his chest. Rashida's nails pressed into his arm as she whispered, voice trembling. "Kirk, what does he mean? What memories?" Kirk swallowed hard, his mind racing. Jason wasn't just coming after him. He was unraveling something bigger, something that had been buried for years. The office break-in, the enigmatic note, the unnerving phone call. Jason wasn't simply making threats. He was playing a game. A game Kirk wasn't confident he could win. Before he could respond, Rashida, a piercing sound pierced the silence. A knock at the door. Both of them froze. Rashida's grasp on his arm intensified. "Kirk, don't." But it was too late. With cautious, steady steps, Kirk approached the door. His heartbeat thundered in his ears as he groped for the knob. He hesitated, just for a second, before ripping it open. Nothing. The hallway was vacant. But just as Kirk breathed with relief, he noticed it. A little unmarked parcel resting on the floor. Rashida took a step back. "Kirk, don't touch it." But Kirk couldn't ignore it. With shaking hands, he reached down and took it up, carefully ripping away the brown paper. Inside was a USB drive. He and Rashida exchanged a tight glance before he moved over to his laptop, plugging it in. His breath hitched when a single video file flashed on the screen. No title, no description, just a timestamp from earlier that day. Kirk paused only a second before clicking on it. The video began playing, and what they saw sent an icy shudder down their spines. It was security footage of their house. Rashida gasped, her hand shooting to her mouth. "Oh my God." The footage showed the front of their home from an angle they didn't recognize, meaning the camera wasn't theirs. Someone had planted it. Someone had been observing them. Kirk's stomach knotted as he saw himself and Rashida depart the house earlier that day. Just minutes after they had driven off, a stranger stepped into the frame. It was Jason. He wasn't wearing a mask. He wasn't hiding in the shadows. He wanted them to see him. He strolled up to their front door, tried the handle. It was locked, but instead of breaking in, he did something even more evil. He turned to the camera, and he smiled. Then he leaned forward, his lips moving, but there was no audio. Just silent words meant just for them. Kirk's hands trembled as he glanced at the screen. "Can you read his lips? What's he saying?" Rashida's voice was barely above a whisper. "He's saying, 'You should have let me in.'" A sickening realization washed over them. Jason hadn't merely broken into Kirk's office. He had been at their home, waiting, watching. Kirk slammed the laptop shut, his entire body tense. "That's it. We're leaving." Rashida grabbed her bag without hesitation. "Where are we even supposed to go?" Kirk's jaw clenched. "Somewhere he won't find us." They rushed out of the office, paranoia clawing at them with every step. Kirk sensed eyes on them. Was Jason watching? Was he already 2 steps ahead? As they climbed into the car and rushed off, Rashida grasped her phone. "I'm calling the police." But just as she dialed, her phone vibrated. A fresh message. From an unknown number. She slowly opened it, and her blood ran cold. It was a live photo of them, taken only seconds ago, from inside their automobile. Rashida dropped the phone, her voice a hoarse whisper. "He's here." Kirk's grip tightened on the wheel. His knuckles went white as his mind raced. How? Where? And then, before he could react, a car plowed into them from behind. The force sent them tumbling across the road, tires squealing. Rashida shrieked as Kirk battled to manage the truck, his heart beating in panic. Another hit, and another. Jason wasn't just following them, he was hunting them. Kirk jerked the wheel, trying to turn into a side street, but the other car remained relentless. They were hemmed in, trapped. There was nowhere to go. Crash. The final impact sent them spiraling out of control. Kirk hardly had time to brace before the world turned upside down. Glass broke. metal crushed, and then darkness. The sound of sirens was the first thing Kirk registered as he slowly regained awareness. His head throbbed, his vision cloudy. Rashida? Panic flooded through him as he turned his head. Rashida? She was slumped against the seat, groaning. Kirk tried to move, pain pouring through his body. They were still in the automobile. But where was Jason? Just then, dazzling red and blue lights lit the debris. Officers rushed toward them, voices shouting. They were taken from the automobile, paramedics swarming them, asking if they were okay. But Kirk wasn't listening. He was surveying the area. Jason was gone. The detective from earlier appeared, his look stern. "Mr. Frost, you're lucky to be alive." Kirk's voice was hoarse. "Did you catch him?" The detective shook his head. "He was gone by the time we got here, but we'll find him." Kirk clenched his fists. He wanted to believe that, but deep down, he knew the truth. Jason wasn't done, and the next time he came back, Kirk Frost never thought it possible. He was navigating the throne 1 minute, then anarchy broke out. Fans yelled, cameras flashed, then began. A figure surged at him, throwing him off balance. The energy in the air transformed from exhilaration to absolute panic. Security rushed in, but it was already too late. The damage had been done. In the few seconds left, everyone went crazy. Was this a random attack, or was it something deeper, something personal? And why did it happen now, exactly as rumors about Kirk's exit from Love and Hip Hop were already making waves? The footage, now circulating online, is driving fans